Welcome back to Chatting with Kody, and I'm Kody with a K. I've been struggling with the ideas what to talk about in episode 4, as some could tell since the last upload was just a channel introduction video. But after talking with the wife, I realized I still have a lot to talk about when it comes to the topic of horror. Whenever I think of sequels, especially with horror movies, I always think of the campy titles they use. Case in point, welcome to episode 4, Horror, Part 2, The Revengeancing. I find most people tend to treat slasher legends like their first beer. They go with what they're introduced to, end up sticking with it for a long while, but then over time grow an appreciation for other slashing legends. And speaking of campy titles, my favorite franchise comes to mind, Friday the 13th, with such amazing titles as The Final Chapter, followed up by A New Beginning, Jason Lives, The New Blood, Jason Takes Manhattan, and Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. Which, to be clear, was not the final Jason movie, as it would be followed 9 years later by Jason X, and then Freddy vs. Jason the following year, and then in 2009 with Friday the 13th reboot, which sadly has not been touched in the past 14 years at the time of writing the script. Jason has always been one of my favorite slashers throughout the ages, being a silent, giant, murdering machine. Jason wasn't the sort to toy with his victims for prolonged periods of time like Freddy, chasing them through nightmarish scenarios or attempting to hunt down a single person, leaving a bloody trail of bodies along the way like Michael Myers. No, not Jason. He would appear, do the deed, and disappear in a flash, leaving a grisly scene for others to find. As Freddy has his finger claws, Michael has his butcher knife, Jason was normally pictured with a machete. But it wasn't his weapon of choice. What was, you may ask? His creativity. Jason would always appear unexpectedly and kill in that same way. One of the most iconic kills for the series came from Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, which of course is the sleeping bag scene, where he picks up a camper by the end of the sleeping bag, holding it shut and swings it once against a tree with a sickening thud. The screaming stops, and then Jason vanishes into the night. The way I described that was a lot more sinister sounding than what the movie shows, but you can find the scene easily by typing in Jason sleeping bag scene into the search bar and seeing it for yourself. But just don't confuse it with the scene from Jason X where Jason goes to space. Maybe Jason is my favorite slasher because just like him, underneath his scruffy, rugged exterior, I'm just a mama's boy at heart. Anyways. Although Friday the 13th is one of my favorite franchises, over time I've grown to appreciate others such as Hellraiser, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and so on. I just want to preface this next part, I'm in no way an expert of any sort, but this just comes as a fan with an understanding of some mental things about stuff and such. Each franchise capitalizes on a different aspect of an unsettling nature that can affect the viewer in different ways. For Friday the 13th, it's the fear that you're not alone outdoors, and that while you're most vulnerable, whether it be having an intimate moment with a partner, trying something new and being under the influence with trusted friends nearby to take care of you, or just attempting to go to sleep in your tent, that someone could just come out of nowhere and end your life in a single stroke. For Nightmare on Elm Street, it's the fear of nightmares and that they might come true. In reality, nightmares happen, some of it may stick with you into the waking world, but over time the memory fades and the fear dissipates. But what if some aspect of that nightmare came true and followed you into the waking world, and the more fear given to the nightmare gives it more power to the point where if you die in your dreams, you die in real life. For Halloween, it's the fear of the past coming back to haunt you for the rest of your life, and that fear becoming a generational curse. No matter how many times it feels like you've escaped your past, it still comes back to haunt you when you think you're safe and over it. For Hellraiser, it's the fear that underneath the surface, people you know might have a dark truth and they use your trust for sinister motives, and that there is a whole world of pain in that darkness that can consume anyone that enters it with ill intentions. For the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's the fear of surviving a traumatic event that'll leave you incomplete, either physically or mentally, and the uncertainty of how to cope with the after effects. Okay, if I can just stop for a moment and break the atmosphere, the drifter scene from the 2003 remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of those scenes that just stuck with me over the past 20 years. Go give it a watch if you want to, but definitely recommend just watching the entire movie. Coldest intro to a horror movie that I've seen to date. Although I saw a TikTok of the title card scene for Evil Dead Rises, and that looks like a pretty good contender for a sick opening. As I'd love to continue this topic, it's getting late. Thank you for sitting with me and letting me ramble on about different things. Hope you have a safe walk back to your place. I'll see you next time. Before I go, I have to ask, who is your favorite horror movie icon? And what is your defense against them?